All right, folks, I'm just headed to CrossFit. I got the Insta360 going. It seems to have survived a couple of journeys last week, but then we had a ton of snow for this area, so it was kind of crappy for driving. Even if you're someone who's comfortable driving, when everyone else is not, makes it kind of a nightmare to get on the highway. I'm gonna go to Reddit for the topic today. Once this person gets past here. And it's going to be something that I've actually had an experience with that maybe like wasn't good, and that might be like kind of interesting for me to talk through. But the topic is around how to kind of work with a manager in terms of gauging your performance when they don't have like either visibility or understanding. So the scenario on Reddit that was, I didn't like read every detail of it, just the high level idea. But the scenario is essentially like someone has a new manager, they're not like going to be fully up to speed, and they just want to make sure that they can have visibility and make sure that like it's not like they're just being, I don't know, like zero progress during some time frame. No one wants that. So with that said, if you want your questions answered, please leave them in the comments below. Look for Dev Leader on social media. Send me a message. More and more people have been doing that, which is great. It's just, I don't know, you can write more and you can keep it anonymous when you write me a message. So happy to try and help out that way. Dev Leader is also my main channel. So if you're like, hey, this guy rambles too much, my main channel is all edited down videos. These ones are, well, I don't know if I can say not edited anymore when I use this Insta360, but if there's nothing interesting on the drive, then I may not even use it. Like to edit, I mean. Okay, so let's talk about it, right? So you have a manager that may not have visibility into what you're doing, primarily because they're new, they don't have an understanding. This isn't totally uncommon, especially if you are working at companies that may do reorgs and stuff. Like, so for me at Microsoft, this is something that happened. Why is someone honking? Literally the light just went advanced and there's a bus going through the intersection. Someone could have died if they drove. But yeah, like at Microsoft for me, this actually happened like almost right away when I joined Microsoft. I had a great manager that I was working for within Office 365. He ended up switching teams. I don't know how far in, but like it might have been within the first year. Maybe it was shortly after. I don't know. It seemed like it was still very early. I think it was within the first year. And then I actually had a period of time where I didn't have like technically my direct manager became my skip level manager before they brought in another one. And then at that point, it was like, okay, like I have someone, my new manager who's great to work for, but she wasn't going to have an understanding of the space we're in. So it's a very similar thing that I went through. So I think one of the things that's important is like, and I think this is just good general advice, is like you need to be vocal about the impact you're having. As a manager for my employees, I try to make sure that I'm raising visibility where possible. So for example, if I know someone's working on a big design for something, it's like, hey, can you know, is there a forum that you could be talking about this more? Right? Have we, you know, this is something that your design does. Maybe we could talk to this other partner team and see if this is something that either affects them, they could leverage, like if they might be, if we talk with them, they could become a stakeholder in this, right? So kind of increasing the scope of impact and visibility. So there's a bunch of different things that I can try and do, but the reality is like you will be your best sort of person to what's the word, like evangelize, like you will be your best evangelist, maybe is the way I want to say that. So you want to make sure that you're talking about what you're doing. Now this can be uncomfortable for people because it doesn't have to feel like you're bragging, but even like when I made videos on this idea before, like this idea of like brag documents and stuff, like the word brag is like kind of what people are suggesting you do, but at the same time, like brag has this really negative connotation. So it's not, I wouldn't say brag, it's like promote what you're doing, right? Like raise awareness to what you're doing. So I think that's how I would recommend doing that. It's like, don't try not to think about it like bragging. So, oh, I thought there was more of a bus lane. I hope I didn't actually cut that bus off. Sorry. And there's many ways you can do that, right? So I think the best one, and this ties into the advice that I always try to give in videos when it comes up, is like directly with your manager, right? Like making sure that you are using that time with your manager in one-on-ones to be able to create that space to talk about your impact. Now, this can be challenging for people because I think often they confuse that with a status update, which, I mean, they're very related, right? You are providing status about the impact you're having, but I think it's more about like what you're messaging. So as developers, generally we think like in terms of everything being super technical, right? And that's not, I'm not saying like you should feel bad for doing that. We're literally writing code, building technical solutions for problems. Like it's what we do. But when it comes to sort of talking about the impact you're having, you do need to step back from that, right? So what I mean is, if you're talking to your manager about trying to convey the impact you're having, well, if you're talking and sharing like, I wrote these unit tests, I had these commits, my pull request went through, like my change is, I don't know, like being reviewed, whatever. Those types of things are like, that's truly just a granular status update. And I'm not saying that you're not allowed to, or it's wrong to provide a status update. Like, it's not the case. But what I'm saying is when it comes to talking about impact, when you get so granular and every time you're talking about what you're doing, it's just these little tiny steps, that does not really paint a big picture about the impact that's being had. So I think that one of the best ways that you can do this is zooming out and thinking about, and you need to understand too, like, why is the work you're doing important? Like, what is the business impact that your work has? And sometimes you may not know, and sometimes that might be hard to form up, but I think that you should put effort into understanding that. This might be something that like you genuinely don't know, and I'm not saying like, again, you shouldn't, like you're bad and you should feel bad, not the case. But if you don't know, you should try to get clarity on that. Talk to the product owner, talk to your engineering manager, and say like, hey, I know that I'm working on this thing, but like I'm not actually sure that I understand like why this is significant for the customer or for our business, right? Because maybe you're doing something that saves money. Like it could be any reason that has business impact. But if you're not sure, I would highly recommend seeking that information out so that you do understand. Now, when you do understand it and you're talking about the progress you're making, maybe you're working on something where there's incremental deliveries on it. Ideally, that's, structuring work this way is great because you're not waiting like 6 months and then finally you can flip a switch and all of the impact is felt. But being able to land things along the way and saying like, hey, look, our goal is a 50% performance improvement. I've now officially landed that first 5% of the gain. Or I've now landed the infrastructure that allows the other people to build on top of that. Like that's an impactful thing, right? I have now unlocked the next phase of this project. That is my contribution to this overall thing, which is going to be increasing the performance by 50%. So finding ways to talk about your work that way, I think is really helpful. It takes a lot of practice. I have many engineers on my team that will talk to me about things like almost purely from a granular status update. And I have had engineers do this in the past too. Fortunately, like I feel like I'm pretty in tune with what the business impact is, so I can try my best to figure that out. So it's different in this context of this question, which is like, my manager doesn't know, right? So if you're like, they don't understand the business impact because they're new, right? They have to ramp up and stuff. And then you're telling them, yes, like I've now completed this pull request, I'm moving on to the next work item. They might be like, dude, I just don't know yet. You're throwing acronyms at me, you're telling me you're coding stuff, and like that's all good, but like I just don't know necessarily what that's going to accrue to from an impact perspective. So you almost have to teach them in this case, right? So telling them about the impact and then reminding them why. So you may, and this is, I'm going to briefly talk about, this is a short drive because I'm almost at CrossFit. I'll briefly talk about, for myself, one of the things that I was challenged with was that like sometimes I wasn't fully aware of the actual impact in the grand, like the bigger scope of things. So my team, my feature crew was more aimed around performance optimizations. So I understood in the context of my team what I was doing. But if I had to zoom out and understand, I think I struggled a little bit to convey that. And it's because, like, truthfully, I was just starting to find my footing and build confidence. And I would argue that between that and I was given a second team, so I started to understand my first team a lot better, like with more confidence. But when I was given the second team, it was almost like, it's going to be really difficult because I have to reset on that team and kind of understand what's going on. I found that it was difficult for me to try and teach my manager about that. And that made it hard to convey progress. So it's definitely a challenge. In my particular case, I actually feel like and I'm not blaming anyone for how this happened, except myself, I guess. But I feel like I had a period of time where my career progress has absolutely halted. In fact, even to this day, I've been at Microsoft for just under 5 years and, have been put up for promotion multiple times and still have not been able to break through that. So on my part, the feedback is always there's not enough, even beyond my manager, not enough visibility into the impact and stuff that I'm having. So it makes it very challenging, but it becomes a very big part. So my number one piece of advice here is that you need to understand why and what the impact of your work is. Just want to make sure this Mustang isn't riding my ass when I pull into here. Especially when I have someone like this who's in the middle of the damn, you gotta be pretty stupid to sit in the middle. Anyway, whatever, we're here. Let me collect my thoughts as I try to park here. Oh, they actually do have spots. No one came to CrossFit today. Okay. One sec. I don't even see the lines on the ground. I might have to repark, I don't know. Yeah, let's readjust that. I still don't see any lines. Oh, on the other side I can see them. Okay, so yeah, my main advice here is you need to understand why. You'll probably need to spend some time sort of teaching your manager about what these things are until they're ramped up, which is unfortunate, but I think that's a bit of a reality. And then beyond that, because depending on your level, if you're a more junior, often it's your manager has a lot more direct say in your promotion. So your manager's always going to be the one that puts you up for promotion, but if you're more junior, it's there's less red tape, so to speak. And then the more senior you get, the more difficult it is for your manager to just be able to say yeah, trust me on this, bro. They end up, that usually has to go through a more of a, depending on the company you're at, right? I'm kind of talking for larger companies, a bit more of a panel of people to review that. Plus you'll have finance, HR, blah, blah, blah. But it's not just your manager signing off on it. So if that's the case, you want to make sure that you are trying to find these opportunities to talk about your work, the impact that you're having outside of that. So I mentioned this in a previous video. My PM and I, for one of the feature crews I manage, we're going to start doing a newsletter more regularly so that we're sharing out with the organization, this is what we are doing. You have to remember too, as a manager, I'm not doing direct work. So I want to make sure that I can raise visibility for what my team is doing. Number one. Number two, that means that if I am talking about what my team is doing, then you can hopefully assume that by like proximity that I am also trying to help lead those initiatives. I'm not just the person that writes the newsletter and says like, by the way, I didn't actually help with any of this. So those are, like that's one strategy that we're trying, but think about that kind of opportunity. Like, how do I share this out? Can I do tech talks on this topic? Like there's many ways that you could do this, and you might have to think about like what fits well for your organization and stuff. So hope that helps. I'll see you next time. Take care.